Hello, my name is Lenore Rattray, and this is Stand Up 8, Season 2, Episode 1. Welcome back. As I record this, it's a hot day and it's the beginning of summer. It's July, and I'm honestly feeling a little like my defenses are a bit down. I'm feeling haunted. And I'll tell you why. Every year as June comes to an end, I face the possibility that my past is going to come back and haunt me. This podcast is based on my time as a missing person. From July 3rd to the 11th, I was a victim of crime. I was taken into the woods. We detail all of that in Season 1. Carrying this story made me sick, and every year the anniversary comes up, and the sadness and the darkness and the reminder of that time of my life hanging in someone else's hands is fairly real. This year, I received a surprise phone call about a week or so ago. It was a sergeant calling to tell me that they were in the process of arresting the bad guy that had hurt me to charge him with another murder. This murder, I'm told, dates back to 1991, a year before he was in BC committing the crimes that he's been charged with here. Now, my reaction has been all over the place, and I guess initially gratitude and respect were quite prevalent. He wanted me to hear about this before it went to the media. And honestly, nobody has contacted me from a policing side regarding the bad guy in probably 25 years. It was amazing, but the second impact was shock and the haunting feeling. You know, even though the bad guy is serving time for the crimes he's committed, including the murders of Ian and Nancy Blackburn in Ontario in 1992, he's being arrested for another woman, one that I had no idea about. And I guess this is where it really became really real again this year. Now, this isn't the intro that I'd expected to be writing. My goal this season was to bring in other survivor voices, ones that have lived through stuff and are creating change. It also will be more talk about experiences surviving crime. There will be details that will be triggering, and I am going to do my best to ensure that from my side, what's being shared is focused on empowerment. But I don't know how that will land. So today, it's a self-defense story. Here we go.
So in the year 2000, in summer, it was July, a stranger broke into my house in the middle of the night and tried to kill me. At the time, I felt that I didn't defend myself. And like a lot of women in the aftermath of that attack, I felt, now I need to learn how to defend myself.
This person is my fellow serial killer survivor, one I consider a true soul sister, I guess, Susie Kahlich. We met in early 2021. I had just started exploring the idea of sharing my story in a business setting. I was in a startup program for female entrepreneurs, and everything we were doing was still online. There were about 5 or 6 of us in a meeting, and when it came to my turn, I did my 2-minute spiel stating that I was on a mission in my business to tell my story of crime survival and build a community to help others navigating the impact of trauma. Pretty immediately after I spoke, a woman named Mimi in the group messaged me saying she knew someone that I needed to meet, and that was Susie. Susie at the time was based in Berlin, Germany, and she ran a successful self-defense martial arts training program for women. Her backstory was that 20-ish years ago, a stranger had broken into her home when she was living alone in LA, and that's kind of where the story begins, with Susie wanting to enroll in something more than basic elementary self-defense classes.
I didn't want to take self-defense classes because I thought, like, that's not good enough. I need the real thing. And I was really lucky in the martial art that I found, because the specific art, which is called ninjutsu or nimpo taijutsu, really resonated with a lot of my own structures of belief and ways of being in the world already. Like, I'd been doing these things on my own in a very disjointed fashion, not martial arts training, but some of the more esoteric aspects of the art. And it was wonderful to find a place where all of those things actually fit. You know, they had names and they had purposes. And I was like, oh, this is fantastic. But I was also lucky because my teacher, my sensei, had had quite a bit of experience with women who had experienced violence. He never asked, he never pried. He just let me know that I was safe and that I could train there, and that would be a supportive and safe place for me to be. That meant everything to me, of course. So when I enrolled in the school, I figured I would just go and learn a couple of moves. I'd be there for like maybe a year and a half or 2 years just to get some basic moves down and then just get on with my life.
I think the statement that connected with me most was when Susie said that the bad guy started attacking her, and her first thought in her mind was, I don't know how to fight. And that took me right back to my situation where that very same thought shouted at me. I quickly realized when I was fighting how useless I was. Like Susie, I guess in my mind, somewhere along the lines, I'd always been drawn to martial arts and thought that I'd like to try taking a class sometime. I don't really know why, but I'd never taken one. Because I was working when the robbery and kidnapping happened, I was given support under what we call in BC our workers' compensation package. I quickly understood that my claim was a very unusual one. The rehab programs were typically for physical injuries that happened in logging, etc. The regular rehab programs weren't applicable. I hadn't broken my arm. I hadn't fallen off some scaffolding. My injuries from crime were both mental and physical on a whole different level. My case manager was named Sandra, and despite this challenge, she was passionate to help me. I believe, if I recall, there was a backstory where a niece or someone in her world had been robbed in the workplace as well. When I suggested that I'd like to take martial arts, Sandra made it happen, and really, it was the best thing I ever did for myself. It got me stronger quickly. The dojo I went to was probably 98% men, boys, all ages. And I think I only ever really told 1, 2, maybe 3 people my story. The owner always made me feel safe. And similar to Susie, the dojo taught ninjutsu, among other forms, including taekwondo and Muay Thai kickboxing. Anyway, I guess my point is that there was a synergy in Susie and I, and that we were both immediately drawn to finding a healing path in martial arts, and that compelled me to learn more about her story. I needed to know what happened to her, the real story.
I had been broken into earlier that day. And later the detectives and I kind of realized that it was the same person coming in earlier to set things up. And also I realized many, many years later to see if I had a weapon. So when I got home from work that night, my house, clearly somebody had been in. The back door was wide open. The screen from my bedroom window had been removed and was sitting like leaning against the building outside the bedroom. So that was very clear where the point of entry was. Stuff had been gone through, drawers, cabinets, but nothing had been taken. A friend of mine suggested that I call the police because I called them up and I was like, did you come in here for some reason? And they said, no, you've been broken into. You need to call the police and make a report. So they made a report. We had a little chit chat. It was no big deal. They figured it was probably kids on a dare. School was out. We're in a heat wave. They're bored. There's nothing to do. That seemed so reasonable that I believed it. And so did they. I mean, there's no reason not to believe it, right? I took the report. I left it on the kitchen table. I had plans to meet a friend for a drink that night, which I was going to cancel, but she talked me into meeting her anyway, because she was like, this is when you need support, when you feel kind of weird about being broken into. I did meet her for one drink. I came home at midnight. I had to open the windows because I didn't have air. I had removed my air conditioner while we're in this heat wave in Southern California. So I had to open the windows just to get some kind of air moving. I went to sleep. I slept with the light on because I still felt kind of weirded out by being broken into earlier that day. I woke up at 4:17 in the morning, and I know that because I turned over and I looked at the clock. And I thought, well, if no one's broken in and tried to kill me by now, I guess I'm okay. And then turned off the light. And then I rolled over to go back to sleep. But my brain was saying, you really have to go to the bathroom. You need to get up and go to the bathroom. I was super groggy and out of it, and I had a futon on the floor. So I got up and kind of stumbled a bit because I was half on the futon and half on the floor. So I was unbalanced. Walked to the bathroom, and there was a man who was naked. Stranger danger is the thought that actually popped into my head.
It's kind of a nebulous, undefined term, isn't it? Stranger danger, one that gets thrown at us as kids and honestly makes no sense and is really kind of completely unfathomable until you are in that moment. Bad stuff rarely happens to us, right? Until it does. It's like when you say something was really hard or difficult or even brutal. Nobody knows what hard or difficult or brutal is until you are in deep with the difficulties of whatever you're facing. A man in your house in the middle of the night is terrifying. And naked? I mean, shit. My insides ache at the thought of it. Not again. Not ever. The fact that Susie can recall so much detail in this experience makes total sense to me. Like her, my mind will never forget. Equally so, I know that my mind will never forget all of my details, and I accept that because maybe that's okay. Maybe that's part of what helps us to keep going, to keep moving forward, to survive.
Another really, really clear thought comes into my head, which is, this is for your life. And that was so crystal clear for me. And that kind of changed the game of what I was doing. My self-defense, basically, we all have a biological self-defense system. I've learned since then that kicked in. My amygdala was already going, and I think it just kicked into higher gear. Everything else was just reaction. My body just reacting. And I didn't have any martial arts training at the time. I had had one self-defense video in high school. But I had no training. So again, I didn't really feel later that I had defended myself. I did think, don't let him get you to the ground, which I think is what most people feel. He did, however, manage to throw me to the ground and slam me against the door frame, grabbed my hair close to the scalp, and started just pounding on my face so hard that it whipped my head around so fast at one point that it actually ripped all the hair out of my head. So I was free of his grip. And because of that, I started crawling on my belly towards the kitchen because my next clear thought was, I'll get to the knives, which I'm so glad now that I didn't do that. But that was, and again, I think a lot of people think this, I'll use the kitchen knives to defend myself. I didn't get that far. He came after me. He grabbed my leg, pulled me over. It was standing over me. And at this point, Now the attack, I don't know how long the attack had been going on at that point, but it had been going on long enough that in a way my brain had normalized the situation. Like, this is my reality right now. So my brain can kind of activate again in the sense of like, what, why is this happening? And the next thing I looked at were his genitals because I wanted to see, like, is he going to rape me? Like, what is going on here? He was flaccid, which was also confusing because I was like, well, if you're not going to rape me, what are you doing here?
Wow, the fight scene. This is definitely another key standout part of the conversation. For me, it forces me back to trying to make sense of something that, really we kind of only are exposed to usually through movies, TV shows, things like that, things that bring violence to us as a form of entertainment. The bad guy always kind of seems to be somewhat of a superhero, I suppose. He's typically a guy. He's quick. He takes control. He pulls his pants down. He does the job. It's forcible. It hurts. And it's usually a female victim. And we watch it. And we're removed. We see it all the time in movies, in shows, in reenactments. It happens and it's done. And then she's usually broken. And this is how we think it gets left. In real life, in the two situations with Susie and I see some differences, and I rarely hear anyone talk about the fact that these bad guys are flaccid or soft as jelly and unable to perform. This is actually what happened to me. In season 1, I talk in detail about how I tried to defend myself when first attacked and started doing the only thing that I kind of been taught to do: pound the bad guy in the balls. I quickly realized that I was pounding nothing. I was hitting nothing but a flaccid ball of jelly. And that's something I've never really talked about openly. It's kind of a lingering question, I guess. Kind of opens up more questions for me. And kind of confuses me, to be honest. Like Susie says, what do he want? What does the bad guy really want? Why is he doing this? Is there an answer?
So he's flaccid, and I'm thinking, so he's not here to rape me. I don't understand what's going on. And I do know at that time I did say, why are you doing this? I don't know if he was about to beat me again or do something else. I have no idea. But all of a sudden he stood straight up, like stood rigid for a second, and then jumped over my head towards the front door. Actually, grabbed whatever was in the bathroom, jumped over my head, ran towards the front door that I always kept chained and locked. For him to run to the front door put me in another panic because I'm thinking, oh my God, it's locked. He's never going to get out of that. And I'm trying to figure out how to say you should use the back door. But at the same time, I don't want him coming back towards me, right? Because he would have to run by me again to use the back door. He puts his hand on the doorknob and just pulls it open smoothly like butter and runs straight out. So he had already prepared the door as his exit before he came for me in the bedroom. He did weirdly shut the door behind him.
Was he naked when
Yeah,
he
he was
ran
naked
out?
and he ran out naked. Yeah. I grab the phone and I call 911. I'm shaking, but the sound comes rushing back into my head. I am sure that I'm screaming into the phone. I'm saying someone just tried to kill me. The 911 operator said, does he have a weapon? And I said, I don't know. I think he had a knife. I don't know why I said that. It's just what came out. And they said, okay, we'll send someone over. And now there's pounding on the door. And I was like, oh my God, he's back. But then I hear a woman's voice calling my name. And I open it up and it's all of my neighbors who had woken up. So I also realized later he must have heard the neighbors right above me start to move around and like they were going to come. Maybe they were shouting for me as well. I don't know. But that must have been what made him stop.
Whew. So, what's next? I can only imagine what Susie is describing here as being a very quick, fast moving, and completely full on shocking scene to live through. I get it. I've I've been there, and I agree with her totally on the question of why. I asked the bad guy the same, I believe. I told him, I said I was a good girl. I told him I never did anything wrong. I was trying to barter with him or convince him, I suppose. Anyway, I think of it now, and it was stupid. I mean, what did he care? Did I really think that by telling him that I was innocent and sweet, and he would say, oh, my mistake. I'll definitely let you go now. Carry on. I also find it interesting that Susie has an ability to pull out so much detail, and to me that speaks to how similarly I've processed my story. I mean, you tell the story for the police, and that helps to anchor it, I guess, in your mind, but then there's the analyzing, the attempts that we make to understand what we saw, what we heard, what we felt, and how we describe it both initially when we're immersed in that emotion, and also following that, the storytelling that happens possibly even years later once the healing has begun to work its way in. Words like flaccid, for example, I mean, it's not an uncommon word, but it also kind of comes across as maybe clinical or sanitized in its terminology. I guess kind of similar to describing someone as being shit-faced versus inebriated. To me, when we say things like this, and it's not wrong, but wording has power, and the word flaccid kind of takes the impact of the violence out of it. It sanitizes the fact that what he's showing you is a weapon he can use to hurt you. It's confusing when it's soft. I'll say that. And I agree. I don't want to overanalyze it, but I've said it many times that hearing another story, another person's story, helps mine to make sense. And that's a detail that confused me before and was refreshing to hear. So, who's at the door? She mentions the neighbors. I'm also going to guess that this is where the police come into the picture, into the story.
The police were horrible, horrible. They took 45 minutes to show up. They send 2 units. Both units are male and female officers. One unit is patrolling the streets looking for the guy. The other unit comes in to talk to me. They say, okay, so your boyfriend beat you up. And I said, no, it was a stranger. I've never seen this person before in my life. They said, okay, so you were raped. Here's the rape hotline. No, I wasn't raped, actually. I was beaten up. Oh, okay, so your boyfriend beat you up. Here's the domestic violence hotline. No, I don't know this person. It's a stranger. Okay, then it was rape. Wasn't rape, then it was domestic violence. You know, they could only provide me these 2 options.
Wow.
And I said, no, it's neither one of those. And they said, this female cop said to me, oh, I see what happened. I had described the event. You went out to meet your friend for a drink. You picked up some guy promising that you would have sex, and then you changed your mind and he got angry and beat you up and ran off. And I was like, nope, that is not at all what happened. The paramedics come. They ask if I want to go to the hospital. I'm having such a bad time with the cops at this point. I was like, why in the world would I go to the hospital to sit in under these glaring lights for probably 6 hours waiting for someone to talk to me and take a rape kit, which wouldn't make any sense because I haven't been raped, all for this to be like nothing, you know? So I was like, forget it. I don't need anybody else questioning my reality right now. I don't want to go to the hospital. And I wasn't aware of how much my face was beaten up. It was like a bloody mess. It was really bad. Apparently, I never saw it. The only mirror I had in that apartment was in the bathroom, and I couldn't go into that bathroom ever again. So I didn't actually know what I looked like.
Right.
And I couldn't feel, any pain on my face. I had a patch of my hair was missing from where it was ripped out. And I had a big mark on my back from slamming against the door frame, which broke the skin. There's a few seconds or maybe minutes that I completely blank on in the attack, somewhere between standing and going to the ground. I don't really know what happened in those moments. And it's 24 years later, and I still don't know what happened. I don't think I'm ever going to know. Maybe on my deathbed, but at this point, and I'm not too worried about it. The paramedics were kind of just standing around, not doing much of anything. They gave up after a while and just left. But the cops, so the female cop is talking to me. The male cop is like wandering around uselessly. I don't know what he's looking for. I give them a baggie to take the hair that's on the floor that had been ripped out. I was like, do you want to take this as evidence? And the cop was like, oh, yeah, oh, that's a good idea. You know, do you have a baggie? And I was like, do you want to just give me your badge? I was very frustrated, but that was my attitude in the moment with the cops. Like, are you joking? But while I was dealing with him, the female cop was wandering around and she saw the police report from earlier that day on my kitchen table. And she said, what is this? And I said, well, I was broken into earlier. And that's the police report from that. And then she turned to her partner and said, this changes everything. Call the station. So they call the station. They say that they've caught a guy. I'd given them a description. They put me in the cop car and drive me around the corner to sit in the back of the car while they shine the headlights on some guy so he can't see into the car, who's not the guy. I told them the guy who attacked me was a white guy. He had very, very pale skin. He was quite lithe and wiry and maybe only an inch or two taller than me, with short black hair and a very sharp profile, because I could see his profile, but he would never allow me to see his face. And they were shining the lights on this like 6'2" black guy and pressuring me to say, like, is this the guy? Absolutely not. Like, why would you even, and they want to close the case. They just want to be done. So that was that. They do call in a detective because now the case means something different, which I just didn't know anything about. Again, I just think finally they're doing their jobs like they're supposed to be doing. The detective comes at like 8 or 9 in the morning. I still haven't gone to the bathroom this whole time. The detective is actually super sweet. He's really gentle. He's walking me through things. So he's kind of leading me to understand, like, it's the same guy who broke in earlier that day. He won't tell me, but he's kind of helping me get there. They call in forensics. They dust everywhere for fingerprints. They're like, they can't find them anywhere. They do find the screen from my living room window folded up and tucked away in the bushes. So he actually came in through the living room window, which, I think that's also something he had set up earlier that day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that was that.
Right. So that was definitely that. It's a horrible feeling to know that you've been targeted or stalked. Somebody was watching you and you didn't even know. There's so much to unpack here, to be honest. I hear the frustration. I'm sorry to hear that she faced the judgment and the accusatory statements from the police, the initial police, I guess, that were present on the scene. The fact that those who were meant to be there to save and support her were trying to reframe and change her story is incredibly challenging. And even as Susie said, they seemed to want to find a quick solution so that it would be over. They could move on. It's heartbreaking, to say the least, particularly when they didn't listen and they took her to identify a bad guy that same night that wasn't even close to the person she had described. Not everyone can be as hyper alert and hyper aware as Susie was and is, even telling this many years later. Using that mindset and tapping into it as a survival tool in the moment when you have just been through something you've been fighting for your life is, to say the least, it's admirable. So what does she do now with all of this? How does she move forward?
I think, again, a lot of people, when they suffer any kind of trauma, they really just want to go back to their normal life as quickly as possible, not realizing that that's impossible. You're never going to go back. You can never go back to that moment before it all happened. You know, you have this new thing that is now a part of who you are and your life experience, and you actually need to build from there. That took me many, many years to figure out, like closer to 15, 20 years to figure that out. Working at night in this law firm was like, it seemed like such a great idea when I got the job, but after being attacked in the middle of the night, it was horrible because I was terrified all the time. I almost lost the job immediately because my post-traumatic stress was making me like really screw everything up all the time. And my manager came to me and said, you know, you are not the person that we interviewed. I don't understand what's going on here. And then I had to tell her what happened, and they were really nice and supportive about it. The first weekend after I was attacked, though, I was waiting to see a therapist because I was like, well, I can't like reason my way out of this. I'm going to need professional help. While I was waiting for the therapy appointment, and I was surrounded by friends and family were calling, and I was really, really supported, except for by the police. It didn't stop the like trauma loop that was going in my head. So regardless of all the love and support that I was surrounded with, the event kept replaying and replaying and replaying, and it was driving me crazy to the point that I was like, I want to kill myself just to make this stop. And that made me think about all the women who actually do that. And that got me angry because I thought, then that means that guy won. And that's so unjust that even if he's not there to do it himself, he's set something in motion that can take care of it for him. And all the women here in Los Angeles, where I lived at the time, you know, I was like, there's so many women here who are undocumented immigrants, who can't read English or speak English, who live in environments where domestic violence is okay and they don't know that it's okay to ask for help. Women who don't know how to access the resources or can't afford to access the resources that I can, who don't have supportive networks, who kill themselves in what may be spiritually, maybe physically, maybe both, you know, but every single woman whose life is changed permanently because of violence, she's lost her potential. Whatever that potential she had, she can build new potential, but whatever potential she was born with, that's gone. That made me so angry. I vowed that I would do something about it. And I had no idea how or what form that would take, or how long it would take to get there. But that was when I made the decision. The thing that makes me angrier than anything else in the world is injustice. And this particular injustice, it still actually to this day sends me into an absolute rage. So if the world doesn't want me like swathing through with my katana and just acting that rage out, we're going to channel it into Pretty Deadly instead. After time and after years of training, when I received my instructor's belt, I went to Chicago and my mom asked me to teach her some self-defense. Gang activity was rising in her area. Seniors were being targeted. She was living a smaller and more constricted life because she was afraid to go from her house to her coffee shop where she was meeting up with her friends. And once again, I was angry at the injustice of it. Of course, I said I would teach her. I also knew my mother well enough to know that she, despite the fact that she's the one who asked me, she still was going to resist anything that I taught her, just on principle of not learning anything from your own daughter. So I had to find ways to make it interesting. I had to find ways to make it memorable, accessible, distract her from the fact that she was learning anything scary. She was actually my perfect guinea pig for Pretty Deadly, and that's how Pretty Deadly was born. That went over so well with her and her friends. They were all in their late 60s, early 70s. I realized like, oh, this is it. This is the thing that I can do.
These epiphany moments are amazing. Hearing it is amazing. Don't we all crave to know that this is what I know I can do? So that's the backstory behind Susie's work with the self-defense program for women called Pretty Deadly. In the next episode, we go further into Susie's story. We look at more of what happened, how to carry it, whether the bad guy was found, and a glimpse into some bigger picture links into possibly major crime in Hollywood. Digging in with Susie on this further reminded me that it doesn't matter what happened to us. It's the impact. It's what we do with it. And that we are more alike than we think. Stay tuned. See you soon. Season 1 and Season 2 are being produced by JJ Lee. Season 2 is brought to you by an anonymous donor, one who was living in North Vancouver at the time that I was rescued. He remembers vividly that time in 1992. He has a story worth telling himself, but for now prefers to remain anonymous, but keep the storytelling alive. And for that, for this support, I am grateful. If you feel that you would like to contribute, please reach out or go to buymeacoffee.com and you can support the project there. Have a great day, and I look forward to more storytelling. Thank you for listening.